Oops. Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. Today's topic is grasping and how, when we have, let's say we have a marvelous, wonderful feeling and the impulse is to say, oh, I want to feel like this forever. It's like, that's the first way to be pushing away that feeling that we were so enjoying. So we're going to take a look at that dynamic of what I'm calling grasping. And should be an interesting conversation. But before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding into your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, all your molecules, all your electrons, and creating this beautiful glow from the inside out into the world. And as you exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's just gently press our palms together and very, very softly rub your fingers against your palms. Feel the delicious tickling and tingling and all that wonderful sensation, and allow yourselves to become present right here, right now, in this magnificent physical form that allows you to experience life. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Grasping. Yeah. So good morning, Rosalind. So good to have you here with us this morning. And welcome to everybody else who's joining us. We're talking about, sometimes we get into a space and it's like, oh, this is wonderful. And one of the first things that comes up is, I want to feel like this all the time. And I want to look at the languaging of that, because as soon as we say, I want, what are we saying? We are affirming the lack of something. Want is lack, right? Not I desire, I prefer, or isn't this delicious? I'm so enjoying it. This is my preference. This is how, it's a fulfillment of a desire, whatever. To be basking in it is different than say, I want to feel like this all the time, because as soon as we make that kind of statement, we're taking ourselves out of that experience, right? We're kind of projecting loss into the future. We're kind of projecting that that the end of this thing that we were so enjoying. And by doing that, we precipitate that end more quickly, right? So when we're having an amazing experience, to be present in that experience, we get to just enjoy it. What's happening when we say, I want to feel this way all the time, is we're taking ourselves out of that experience to be observing it and recognizing that it's almost like we're calling in the end of that experience, right? And I think that this is the case, not just with saying something like, I want to feel this way all the time, but when we're in relationship, sometimes, we look at what we want, right? Rather than what we desire, we look at what we want, what's lacking, right? Then when we think about what we want, it's what's wanting, it's what's missing. And the language that we use is important because it invokes our experience. The language influences our experience. So if you are a follower at all of Abraham Hicks, and Esther Hicks channels Abraham and the law of attraction, the language that we use is important. And just the language of or the experience of grasping, like trying to hold on to this. I'm going to hold on to this feeling. As soon as we allow ourselves or move into that space of holding on, we're kind of impeding the flow of life, right? Because we're trying to hold on. And I think it's important to recognize the value of contrast. We wouldn't want to be living in rainbows and unicorns all the time without a dark cloud in the sky ever, because then we would stop noticing that we're surrounded by and cherishing the fact that we're surrounded by rainbows and unicorns, right? That would become mundane, and we wouldn't be able to be present to it in the same way. So I'm wondering, what other arenas do we grasp? It's like, oh, we have such an amazing connection with somebody, and then we want more of that. We want more of that, versus we desire more of that, or we want to grab onto it, we want to hold on to it. And as I'm thinking in terms of relationships, I remember the saying, if you love something, set it free, and if it's really meant to be, it'll come back to you. So that's really an admonition to not be holding on, right? To be allowing for the flow of life. And the thing about holding on is that it takes us out of, or grasping is, it takes us out of the experience of the present, right? Because in the present, when we are able to presence ourselves, then life flows. We're not holding on to anything. We're allowing things to just ebb and flow as life brings them in and out of our experience. And there's so many paradoxes about this holding on, letting go kind of thing, right? I know that it's interesting when we talk about a concept, you say, I'm not grasping that. And I think we get to look at, rather than grasping, integrating. What's the difference? When we move into an experience of integration, then whatever that thing is that we were trying to grasp becomes a part of us. And we don't have to hold on to it because it's foundational. So Rosalind says, today's topic reminds me of the expression grasping at straws or get a grip. Perhaps the opposite would be holding something close to your heart, feeling rather than the thinking. You nailed it, Rosalind. Exactly. It's really about the experience rather than the thinking of it that is tinged with lack or fear of loss, right? Why grasping at straws, that's an interesting one. When we think about that, it's like trying to grab onto something that's insubstantial, right? Why do we try to grasp onto things? Why do we try to get a grip? What does that mean? It means that we're trying to exert some kind of control. Is at least that's my imagining of it. is that we're trying to exert some kind of control. And why are we trying to exert some kind of control? Because it gives us a sense of safety, right? That's what control is all about. So as soon as we say something like, I want to feel this way forever, or, I want to hold on to that thought, the implication right in that very statement is that it's going to escape, or it's going to get away, or I'm going to lose it. So there's a fear that underlies that whole dynamic, right? So I think it's important to be looking at our language and also our inclination to feel that something is going to get lost. Just because experiences come and go doesn't mean that it's lost, or that their next thing is less than, right? As we experience life, being in the flow is the opposite of trying to hold on, right? I'm in this place, I'm going to try and hold on to this. Why? Because I'm fearful maybe of what might come next. Or I'm assuming in some way that what's next is not going to be as wonderful, or maybe it's even just a fear or anxiety around the unknown, so I'm going to hold on to this because I don't know what's coming next. And the thing about grasping also, or holding on, is kind of living in a place of lack of abundance. It's living in a place of lack, right? Because or scarcity, right? Because we're figuring, oh, I have to hold on to this because who knows what's next. And we get to look at this in regard to money too. The dynamics around money are very interesting. We started talking about money a couple of weeks ago. I think it's a topic worth talking more about, because one of the things that drives so many of our behaviors around money is fear, right? Fear of lack, fear of loss, scarcity mentality. All of those things drive our holding on to money, thinking there's some security there. We don't know what the future is going to bring, and money is going to help us navigate that future, right? So we want to hold on to money. Well, and I said want to, right? Good morning, Robin. So good to have you here with us. We're talking about grasping and holding on, and how when we do that, we are kind of affirming our fear or our lack. Now, so I often talk about holding with open hand. And I think that that's a whole different experience. I'm not like, especially when we're talking about money, it's a very different dynamic to be saying I have to hold on to my money versus I can be present. Okay, well, thanks for stopping in. Robin says I'll need to rewatch this one. Oh, well, maybe for the whole idea here, but I'm guessing it's because you don't have time to be with us now. So I'm glad you stopped in. Anyway, to hold with open hand is very different from grasping, right? Like if we can hold something with an open hand, there's a trust to allow that to be here. Like I'm not trying to stop it from moving, or I'm not afraid of its leaving. And I think that the money conversation is probably a really good one to be looking at this holding and grasping kind of idea. But we also have it, we have it with relationships. We have it with all kinds of things, with our ideas even, right? So what we get to look at is, I had, the reason I'm talking about this is because in a couple sessions yesterday, things came up for people and they're like, oh, I want to hold on to that feeling. And it generated a conversation about, well, what's up with that? Like on some level, that kind of conversation is an indicator of a lack of trust for self and the universe. It's kind of being in a place of, I can't rely on the universe to provide this kind of experience again. So I'm going to hold on to it. I'm going to hold tight. And when we do that, again, as I said earlier, it separates us from the experience itself. And which is a shame, because it's accomplishing exactly what we would be trying to avoid, right? We're trying to avoid the disappearance of this feeling. And then as soon as we say, I want to hold on to this, what happens is we've separated ourselves from that feeling already, right? In order to be able to say, okay, I've got to hold on to this. So the experience itself is now not fully what it was. So it's kind of interesting, again, the paradox. It's like, if you love it, set it free kind of thing, that in order to have it, we get to let it go, like to be not holding it, to just experience it and not to try to grab it, grasp it, constrain it, restrict it, control it. And so Rosalind says, or saying, you would never understand. Oh boy, the choice of words do have an impact on both the receiver and the person holding that thought. 100%. So something like, you would never understand. That's almost an invocation, right? So it's interesting though, because it can be perceived that wording. First of all, if I say you would never understand, it's saying that I don't believe that you're capable of understanding. And then I might not be able to receive your understanding if that's what my belief is, right? And you could be reacting to that by thinking that the person is saying that you're not enough or not capable. You might get offended, or you might rise to the challenge and say, of course I can. Let's give it a try. Like, I'm going to rise to the challenge. But our words are really, really important. And Robin says, what about security versus holding on? Maybe another conversation. I don't think it's another conversation. I think it's very much this. Thank you, Robin. I think it is this conversation, because when we talk about security, what is security? Oftentimes the way that we measure security is by what we have, right? Like, I'll feel secure when I have $1 million in the bank, right? For example, like, what is security? Security is driven by fear. Typically, like, depending on how we hold it, usually most people hold security with very tight fists, and have a lot of anxiety and fear around it, because what's driving any kind of impulse for security is a feeling of insecurity, right? So we create these constructs that enable us to manipulate our minds in such a way that we can then feel secure. But the thing is, if we are innately feeling, not innately, but if we are feeling insecure, no amount of money is going to make us feel secure. You know, we might feel more, there might be less panic about money, but there are people that have tons and tons of money that are totally insecure. You know, like you would look at their bank statement and you say, oh my gosh, you know, you've got it all, you've got to feel secure. And it's like, no. So when we attach our security or our sense of security to externalities, ultimately there is no security in that, because money can disappear. You know, money can get devalued, money could get stolen, money could get burned, money could, you know, like there are things, there are circumstances, right, where we provide the illusion of control, right? So I'm stashing money in the bank because that's going to make me feel more secure. Well, first I get to feel secure. And then I get to put the money in the bank, and the money may come and go, and I get to still be secure. So, you know, like my dad had all kinds of money in the market, and then the market tanked and he lost half of what he had. And he was in retirement, and it put him in a very much different financial situation, you know, but he had the security of having made the investments that he did. You know, he was being smart with his money. He was invested in things that were supposed to be solid, and then there was a crash. So, you know, if our individual security is attached to these externalities, then there's a problem, right? And again, it's kind of like holding with open hand versus grasping, because if my whole life, my experience of my whole security is dependent upon externalities, then if something happens to those externalities, then my well-being, my foundational well-being is then threatened, right? And I'm just looking for Maggie. I hear her biting on things. I think I have this wall hanging that has all kinds of beads on it. Maggie likes to pick off the beads, and yeah. So anyway, there are, I'm not saying that, you know, the financial security, like that's an important thing in many ways, because the way that we live, our ability to have a home and a roof over our heads and food is dependent on finances, and there's nothing that is certain. And so to have the security in oneself, to know that we're resilient enough to navigate circumstances, that's kind of the security. What comes from that security is being able to go with the flow of things, to be able to be present and responsive. Rubin says, money is not my issue, a place to call home, being able to know you have a place to lay your head for rest. Okay, so that's a really big thing too, right? So maybe I have a great sense of security because I have a house. Maybe I own a house, and that makes me feel secure. Well, there are situations where storms, right? Maybe the house gets leveled by a storm, or maybe it gets conscripted by the government to let a pipeline go through. You know, like if my security is attached to the structure of my house, then that could be problematic if something happens to the house, right? And I'm not saying that it's more comfortable or less comfortable, but to have your well-being attached to externalities, whatever they are, is something that makes us even more vulnerable to being devastated, right? Like, all my things are gone, and so my life is over. My life is ruined. Well, I understand. I guess what we're talking about ultimately is non-attachment. To be making provisions, and then also to be having a place of non-attachment, of presence. So we all have some treasured possessions, right? And so I've had like some glassware that were treasured possessions. I enjoyed them. I really liked them. They were my favorite glasses, for example, drinking glasses, crystal or whatever. And lately, it's been really interesting. Over the past several months, a whole bunch of them got broken. And not. Good morning, Lisa. Welcome. So good to have you here. I don't believe I've seen your name here before. It's great to have you. So they ended up getting broken, like these things that I had and treasured for a long period of time. And I felt like it was a test. In the past, I probably would have wept over the loss of these things. And what I recognize now, and I'm very grateful to recognize, is that I was able to, I got a twinge. I have to admit, I got a twinge. It's like, oh, but it wasn't a horrible, horrible crisis. We're glad to have you back, Lisa. So I think that as we become more solid and secure in ourselves, we don't need the external things to validate us. And we can be grasping less and holding with open hand more, and allowing life to unfold with more grace, and have an experience of grace in our lives more often. So that's it for today, I think. So I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live here on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. And I am so grateful to you guys, all of you, for showing up and sharing and contributing to the conversation. Robin says the challenges we have to continue on our journey. Thank you for unfolding different ways to look at the situations. Well spoken. Thank you so much, Robin. Much appreciated. And I appreciate all of you. And thank you, Rosalind. It's so good to spend this time with you and ponder these things, these morning musings together. So until next time, so much love, and hold with open hand. See how that feels.